This is Anton LaVey, and I am here to speak what is here in the moment. So I've specifically also asked to have my interview today. So let's have a look at fascinating manifestations in this world. You have the God entity and you have the Satan entity. And it's fascinating enough because in the dimensional existence there was and there is, okay, here is an interesting thing. There is a manifested Satan being in the dimensions, also a manifested devil being in the dimensions. You want to know an interesting thing? There isn't a God entity being in the dimensions. That makes you wonder, right? And I'm certain Satan and the devil will be coming soon as well and having communicate with you their individual experiences. But what you first must understand is the following. A very fascinating event had taken place. In the dimensional existence, human beings on Earth, now this was a long time ago, before a 2-year process started, but I will continue with that in a moment. First, let's go back. And while I was still in the dimensions when I died, there was actually a Satan entity, a devil entity, and a God entity in the dimensions. Okay, but these entities were created by human beings' beliefs. Fascinating. So, have a look. How did human beings work here on Earth? You have energy. If you have a certain belief, a certain thought, a belief is in a thought form, then what happened is you actually charge that belief and that thought with energy. Extensive amount of energy. So imagine you have 1 billion people believing in a God. All of that energy, of that belief that 1 billion people hold together forms an entity. That entity is all the energy, all the collective energy of that one belief, of all the 1 billion people coming together, manifesting an entity of that belief, which is a God. And because of that energy being so extensively compounded and charged within the human beings, it is so extensive, that belief and that and every action that goes with that. Let's say prayer. Going to an establishment as a church where that energy is specifically also accessed. And that only happens on one day a week. And those 1 billion people, I'm just taking it to 1 billion, it's a rounded off beautiful number, 1 billion people going together to church on that one day with their one belief of that one God, and they compound that belief and that energy within that belief, and that entity manifests. Okay? Now, the reason an entity manifested is because that compounded energy is so extensive, or it was believed to be so extensive, that the human physical body was not able to maintain and contain that vast amount of energy. Fascinating. Why not? Within human beings there were certain placements. Okay? There had been placements inside human beings' physical bodies to suppress, let's say, truth is a kind of a, what word am I able to use? Their essence. Okay, I'm going to use essence. Their essence of the realization of who they actually are. Okay? So such placements have been placed inside the human physical body. And those placements, because those placements were in the human physical body, the human physical body was not able to maintain such amount of vast energy that was compounded. Now energy, also a fascinating thing, because energy was derived from within these placements. In truth, energy doesn't really exist. Energy in terms of the inconsistency thereof. You know, you have energy fluctuations, vast amounts of compounded energy, and then depletion of energy, and then you have to do this to heighten those vibrations or heighten that energy expression, or you know, if the vibrations are too low, you have to do this to heighten it. You know, those things. That is because of the placements that are in place inside human beings. Those placements I call systems. Now, these systems were used to suppress the essence of who human beings really are, as I've said. And these systems inside human beings collectively in the world contain that energy fluctuation manifestation. And that belief of that 1 billion people compounding energy inside them from within the placements would manifest an entity. Because in truth, who you really are is constant, infinitely constant. There's no energy fluctuations at all. Energy fluctuations only exist from within the placements, the systems that are inside the human physical body. Okay? So, naturally, these placements could only contain so much energy. Who you are is infinite. There's no such thing of being able to contain only so much energy, or process so much energy, or manifest so much energy, or experience so much energy, only because of these systems and these placements inside human beings. So, the God entity was created. And you won't believe that this God entity in the dimensions actually became conscious. So, now how many different perspectives of a God exist in this world? Multiple. Now, for each and every single God belief of a certain amount of people, there was an entity, a conscious entity in the dimensions of that. Fascinating. And when I crossed over, I saw this. You had these gods, God entities, and you know what? They even existed in their own heaven. So let's say that you have a belief in a God, and that God is connected to a heaven. That entity God that was created because of that belief was actually manifested in that heaven, in the dimensions. Fascinating. So you'd be walking around literally in the dimensions, and you'd observe these gods in their heavens. And you know what? When you die, and you had the belief in that particular God of that particular heaven, along with that 1 billion people, you'd go to that heaven in the dimensions, just because of that belief. Fascinating. And I could see these people dying, and they're going to these different gods in their different heavens, and they don't even know of the existence of the other gods. I'll tell you now in my second interview how I was able to see that, and why beings that had died and gone to a specific God, heaven, didn't. This is Anton. I'll continue in my second one. Thanks.